Hey, welcome back to Cool Classics. Today we're going to take a look at the life and career of Irene Ryan, best known for her role as Granny on the Beverly Hillbillies. I have some cool clips, some freaky facts. Here we go. She was born Jessie Irene Noblett, October 17th, 1902 in El Paso, Texas. She says that her mother gave birth to her in the home, and her older sister, Anna, who was 17 years old at the time, helped deliver her. Irene says that having a sister that much older than her sometimes felt like she had two mothers. Her father was an Army sergeant from North Carolina, and her mother, Catherine McSherry, had immigrated from Ireland. The family ended up moving to San Francisco, California, and when Irene was 11 years old, she entered a singing contest at the Valencia Theater and won $3 for singing the song Pretty Baby. $3 back in 1913 is equal to $87 in 2022, so that was a pretty big deal. As a teenager, Irene really enjoyed singing and performing in plays, so this naturally progressed into performing in vaudeville. And while she was there for a couple of years, she made some friends, one of which was a new upcoming comedian and writer named Tim Ryan. Well, Tim and Jessie became inseparable. They started to perform a doubles act together, and she began calling herself Irene, so it was known as Tim and Irene. And they quickly moved from vaudeville into radio. Here's the earliest performance I can find. It's 1936 by Tim Ryan and Irene Noblett.
The Jello Summer Program, starring those madcaps of the microphone, Tim Ryan and Irene Noblett. Don Voorhees in his orchestra. Yes, and believe me, Tim, when I say it, I certainly hate to leave you.
Thanks, Don, and I'll miss you, too. You're leaving for California tonight, aren't you?
Yes, I'm flying out after the show. Oh,
Yeah.
say, Tim.
Yeah?
You remember the first night we opened this show, and you were a little short of money, remember?
Oh, so you're flying to California, eh, Don?
I loaned you a $5 bill.
Yeah, I think Irene should be here by now, too. Here's Irene now, just in time. Hello, Irene.
Hello, Irene.
Yeah, I was just wishing Don a happy and profitable year.
Hello, Don.
Good to see you.
You look sad, Don. You look like you were going to lose somebody or something.
Yes, I'm beginning to feel that way, too.
Ignore him, Irene.
You remember the opening night of this show, don't you?
Oh, sure, I remember, Don.
Well, Irene, that night I loaned Tim $5, remember?
Oh, Tim, I'm surprised at you. Give Don his $5.
That was the $5 I got for you. You said you'd pay it.
Oh, so you're going up in an airplane, huh, Don?
Yes, flying away.
Now, Tim and Irene fell in love and got married, so that's when she became Irene Ryan. And the two of them signed a deal with Educational Films to make 11 short comedy movies. The characters they played in these shorts were based off of their vaudevillian and radio routines, which fell into the category of Dumb Dora, which was a popular comic strip from 1924 through 1936. Now, around the same time, George Burns and Gracie Allen were in the same genre, and they were probably the most popular at the moment. But here comes Tim and Irene with a little bit different spin. Irene's character was more zany and flighty, and she would always distract Tim, and he would have to yell, "Will you stop?" which became a catchphrase, and they actually put out a comedy short called Will You Stop? Irene says that after their contract ended with Educational Films, the two of them had sort of grown apart. They still loved each other, but they were going their separate ways, so they divorced in 1942. Now, Tim went on to sign a contract and became a prolific actor with Monogram Pictures, and she ended up going on tour with Bob Hope in 1942 and becoming part of his radio program for 2 years. That's when Irene gets an offer by Edgar Kennedy to start appearing in his comedy shorts playing his wife. And his wife would be like the comedy part of it because his character is always sort of a mean, hot-tempered guy. Matter of fact, here's an episode called Hold Your Temper.
So I'm going to give you one more chance.
Oh, honey.
Oh, now, but you've got to promise. Now, cross your heart.
Cross my heart. Start all over again, just like we were before.
Oh, Mother! Brother! Edgar and I are going to start all over again, and he's promised never to lose his temper. Isn't it wonderful?
Well, how can you take that bully back when only 3 weeks ago he almost broke Brother's jaw?
Yeah.
Now, if you and Brother don't like it, why, you have to be the ones to move.
Oh, you get Edgar good and mad, he loses temper and sock you in the jaw. Then Irene will leave him and we'll be set for life.
Why don't you take the sock this time?
Why, brother, would you ask your poor old mother to do that?
Okay, brother. I apologize.
I won't accept your apology. See?
Oh,
Edgar! Where are you going?
Is it just me, or did those shorts give you a little bit of a Three Stooges vibe? Now, her ex-husband Tim still had his movie contract going, and he contacted her and asked if she would reprise her role and they would play Tim and Irene in an upcoming movie. And she agreed, so they put out Sarong Girl, and it went over so well, they went ahead and put out 3 more. Melody Parade, The Sultan's Daughter, and Hot Rhythm. Now, despite putting these movies out, they didn't fall back in love. They ended up just doing their own thing again. Matter of fact, she jumped right into the movie Oh My Darling Clementine, playing Princess Sheba.
Wait a minute. What's this I see? Don't tell me now. Let me guess. Why, it's a jamboree right here in the town of Harmony. Why, people are smiling. They're laughing. They're having a good time. Oh, I've never been so happy in all my life.
Well, she was happy, because in 1946, she married Harold E. Knox. From there, she starts to appear in at least 2 or 3 movies per year without fail. But a lot of these roles were smaller parts, like in this movie, Mighty Joe Young.
Lions are just darling. I simply love them.
You know what lions love, don't you?
No.
Sweet little girls like you.
Nicky, stop.
Other roles were a little bit more predominant, like in this movie, The Happiest Girl in Town.
I bring gaiety and laughter. I'm the rainbow that comes after. The rain comes pouring down. Just look at me, and you will see. I'm the happiest girl in town.
She keeps saying that she's happy, but she really isn't. She knows her roles are getting smaller and smaller, just like in this movie called My Dear Secretary from 1948, starring Kirk Douglas.
This is your new secretary.
Yes, I am.
Say, look at that. She knocked over a bottle of ink all over the carpet, and it's going to be hard to get out, too. The landlady says I'm not to clean up any more messes. Just do my regular work and get out of here.
I'm an expert at this sort of thing.
He sure is. He cleans up about 6 of them a month.
I'll need a cloth and some rug shampoo.
You better not let the landlady see that. She'll add $100 for damages to your rent. That's more than last month.
Now, as she went into the 1950s, she would still appear in movies like Bonzo Goes to College, The Whack from Walla Walla, Blackbeard and the Pirate, and this one you see right now called Half Angel.
Go home. Oh, give me a cigarette, will you, darling?
Yeah, king size.
Oh, I forgot. You don't smoke.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that rich patient, the one with all the moolah?
You mean the one who's so grateful for your tender care he leaves your fortune?
Yeah, there's exactly what I mean. Somebody like John Raymond. He's got money, he's got good looks, but unfortunately, he's got his health, too.
After that, she ran into a real dry spell. She didn't find any work in 1953, and in 1954, she only had 1 small role. But by 1955, television was just starting to boom, so she was going on auditions. She would appear on things like Matinee Theater, The Whistler, The Danny Thomas Show, and then the Restless Gun TV series.
I make the best strawberry preserves in the county.
I knew I'd find you here, Bessie. And if you're planning with Otto to cheat me out of... Why, that's wonderful, because you're the one man that Bessie can't fool. And it's high time that somebody else won the prize.
I've won the prize year after year because I deserve it, Judge.
Oh, now you're seeing Bessie in her true light, trying to pull the wool over your eyes. As if I didn't trust you, Vint.
Boy, she barged in that door and reminded me of Granny. Now here she is on The Real McCoys episode, Grandpa's New Job.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm stuck know, I simply cannot answer all of this mail about lodge affairs without a member being here to help me. I could feel the tension all through here, all around my eyes, down the back of my neck, clear down to the floor.
I know. Well, you can relax now. I've got a volunteer for you. Mr. Amos McCoy, a wonderful man.
Well, there's a lot of letters he can read here. All this work that's been stacking up here for days.
Well, he'll take care of that.
Now, here's an example of a letter. It says, Dear Sirs, the Kindness Cat Club requests the use of the Lodge Hall for a cat show on May the 2nd.
Then tell them they can use it for nothing.
For nothing, Mr. McCoy?
Yeah, we got mice here.
Very well, I'll tell him.
Now, in 1961, she gets a reoccurring role on a new series called Bringing Up Buddy. Her character is called Cynthia Boyle, and she plays in 3 episodes, but unfortunately, the series got canceled. So back out auditioning she goes, and she ends up on Wagon Train, episode The Malachi Hobart Story.
Hello, Duke.
Good to see you again, Martha. When I rode up, the place looked deserted. How's George?
He's dead. Drowned. There was a flash flood. They found his boat 5 miles down the creek on a sandbar. They never did find his body. George!
Now that's a freaky scene. And speaking of freaky, Irene says that she heard about this new show that Paul Henning was developing, and she went down to audition for a part of a grandmother. And when she showed up, the casting director told her that she was too young for the part. And she says, "What are you talking about? I'm going to be turning 60 next year." And he said, "Sorry, not interested." To make matters worse, her husband Harold Knox filed for divorce the same year. Irene said this was a real low point in her life. She didn't know which direction things were going to go for her, but she was determined to not give up. She says that one day she went on an audition, and afterwards she thought, I'm pretty close to where Paul Henning is at, and he's still auditioning for this granny role. I'm going to go in and talk to him and ask him why I can't audition. I know him. I've worked with him before. Now, what Irene didn't know was that Paul was having a hard time to fill this position. It was the last role open for the show. It was an integral part as far as he was concerned. The character of Granny could make or break the series. He had already auditioned hundreds of women for this role, but not one of them brought to life the character that he envisioned. Now, Paul was working closely with Bea Benaderet, who was really helping him through this casting process. She was also his emergency backup plan. He called her his secret weapon. If he had to, he was going to use her in the role of Granny if all else failed. But he really considered her to be too young and too buxom for the part herself. Well, in walks Irene, unannounced, not there to audition, just to speak with Paul. And he gives her some time, and Bee's right there too. Everybody's talking for a little bit, and she says, Paul, they wouldn't even let me audition for this role. And he says, that's because I have a certain criteria that I want people to meet. I feel everybody's been too young so far. You have to have a certain look. You have to look older. And she goes, oh, so that's a compliment. You're saying that I don't look old. And they laugh. And she goes, do you realize the person that takes this role is going to be working 12-hour shifts, 7 to 7 with you, and if they're too old, they're not going to be able to do it? And he says, yeah, I get that. And she goes, are you still saying that I don't look like I could be a granny? Do I have to go home and get my shawl and wig? And everybody laughs, and he goes, you know what, if you want to audition, go ahead, let's audition right now. So Paul gives her some background information on the character. He says she's a real spitfire. She talks with a southern accent. She's from the hills. Actually, she's a hillbilly. And Irene says, say no more, that's me. And she starts stomping around there reading lines, and she was wearing pants, so she started pulling up her pant legs and rolling them up. And this one guy starts laughing, and she looks at him and says, I'm going to make you go out there and pull a switch off that tree and use it on you if you don't stop laughing. That's when another guy started laughing, and she told him, I'm going to take you to the woodshed. Matter of fact, I'm going to kick you in your butt all the way to the woodshed. Everybody's cracking up, and Bea Benaderet says, that's your granny. Paul agreed, and Irene was hired. Next, they had to go into pre-production and make sure that all these characters could come to life and work with each other just like he envisioned. Here's a little clip of Granny's first screen test in 1961.
Well, the first thing to do is to get her into a dress. She's getting too big to be running around in man's duds.
Well, Ellie Mae carries herself proud with her shoulders thrown well back.
It ain't her shoulders that's a-popping them buttons.
The screen test went well, the cast was set, and the Beverly Hillbillies went into production. Brought to you by Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Jethro, finish my sweeping. I gotta go someplace.
No, ma'am, Granny. Sweeping is women's work.
You go cut me a hickory switch and you wait for me.
Granny?
No wonder they have to have policemen to watch the young'uns.
I ain't gonna bite on that one again. I'm too smart.
Is that a fact?
Yeah.
That'll be the day when you can outsmart your old granny.
Oh man, she was great. Now the critics hated the show. They panned it every chance they could get. They called it lowbrow humor, but America ate it up. As a matter of fact, it went worldwide. It started with Canada, then the UK, Australia, and it just kept spreading. And it ran for 9 seasons, 274 episodes.
Now, Ellie, I want you to run your best again me. It'll be good practice for us.
Well, how can we have to practice, Granny? You know we can beat these city women.
Yeah, but...
Granny, you don't have to beat me to be Queen of Beverly Hills. I don't care shucks about it.
But this is gonna be a wing-dinger of a race betwixt you and me, and I ain't done no top-speed running lately. Now do your best again me.
Get set.
Who won, Jed?
Well, when you passed me, feels like Ellie was out in front of you a little.
She's out in front of me, standing still.
Now, Paul Henning went ahead and created another character called Cousin Pearl, and this was so Bea Benaderet could play her and be on the show too. And eventually he wrote that character out of the show because he started a new series called Petticoat Junction, and he put Bea Benaderet as the lead actress on there. Now, Irene Ryan went over and played twice on it as the character Granny.
Must have left my glasses on that chitney. You live here at the Shady Rest Hotel? And I thought folks in Beverly Hills was unfriendly. Hey! They's right about you, Kate. You and Cousin Pearl is look alike. And I thought Jethro was an ugly baby.
Now, the full name of the character Granny is Daisy Mae Moses, even when she appears on Petticoat Junction. But one time the character appears on Mr. Ed, Season 6, Episode 5, which they will not let me use a clip from, and the character is called Granny Clampett. There's also a movie from 1966 called Don't Worry, We'll Think of a Title, and Irene appears in there playing the same character, although she's referred to only as Granny. Other than the ones that I just mentioned, Irene didn't appear on television or in a movie from 1962 through 1971. Instead, she focused just on the Beverly Hillbillies and her character Granny. And she says that her and Buddy Ebsen almost made it all the way to the top a couple of times in their career, but it wasn't until this show and those characters that they hit #1 and were loved by audiences. And for that reason, she loved and respected her character and her fans. Now, Irene did have a contract with the Sahara Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, and she would perform a stand-up comedy routine there when she was not filming with the Beverly Hillbillies. Now, in 1971, when the Beverly Hillbillies ended, her contract with the Sahara also ended. From there, she only appeared on television a few more times. She was on Love American Style twice and a handful of game shows. Then in 1972, she signs on to star in the Broadway musical Pippin, where she gets to sing a solo performance of No Time at All. The show is very successful and starting to win a lot of accolades. When it continues into 1973, on March 10th, Irene suffers a stroke during her performance on stage. After being stabilized in New York, her doctors flew her home to California, where there she was diagnosed with an inoperable, malignant brain tumor. Over the next 4 weeks, every cast member of the Beverly Hillbillies made their way to her side and spent multiple days with her. During this time, she set up her will and estate, and since she didn't have any children, she created the Irene Ryan Foundation and left all of her money to fund it. Now sadly, on April 26, 1973, at the age of 70, Irene passed away. Her body was interred in a mausoleum at the Woodlawn Memorial Cemetery in Santa Monica, beside her sister, Anna Thompson. The Irene Ryan Foundation received over $1 million from her estate, most of which was earned during her time on the Beverly Hillbillies. And every year since its creation, it has provided a full scholarship for one student every year without fail. The scholarship is given to the person with the most outstanding performance at the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival. Another amazing story. I loved her. Now, some of you may not know this, but the 4th video I ever made on this channel was Irene Ryan. I didn't know how to edit pictures. I didn't know how to use clips. I didn't even have a microphone. I made a lot of mistakes in that video, but I was inspired by her, and I continued on, and now I was able to go back and redo this the proper way. So if you're making YouTube videos or doing anything else, just don't give up. Stay inspired, be creative, have fun with it. You will get better with time. Cool Classics.